My name is Tim Harris, and I'm a 10th generation Apache Stone. I've been working with stones, minerals, and crystals ever since I was about 5 years old with the help of my grandmother. Because she was taught by her grandfather, who was taught by his grandmother, and like that, many generations. But I've had the opportunity to take some of that material that she taught me, translate it into English, and help other people to understand it. What we're going to be talking about tonight is all the cool stuff amethyst. Now, I did bring for you that so that you would be able to take that home with you. And it's a 4-page write-up that I have enough files on my computer about amethyst to write a book all by itself. Okay? Amethyst can be found, we're going to start with the back. If you go all the way to the last page, there's a map. And on that map, you can see that amethyst can be found everywhere. Okay? And you could find purple gravel just about 5 miles from here. But when you, actually about 50 miles from here. But if you go to this next page, this gem grade variation of it is a little harder to find. Interestingly enough, these little super gemmy, beautiful amethysts are also found in the ones that, if you go back to the last page, are big enough for you to move into.
It's going to be an expensive house.
Well, unfortunately, it's owned by somebody else at the moment. But the next one we get, maybe we'll charge for tour rides. Amethyst comes in lots of different shapes and colors. This is from Uruguay. It's a deep purple variation of it. But the more crystalline type comes out of geodes that come out of Brazil. So it also occurs in free market or freestanding aspects of just coming out of the ground. So we have. It also basically comes out, you see it in sticking out of like the side of a mountain, and it's a large, almost candle-shaped piece of amethyst. And that's found in various places around the world, some places here in the United States. Another way that it's found is in a pocket. Have you ever watched the show Prospectors? Well, in Arkansas, they find amazonite and smoky quartz in pockets. Well, they also find amethyst in pockets in Canada and in Mexico. And what a pocket is basically hardened dirt. And unfortunately, as soon as they disturb the hardened dirt, well, it kind of falls and then they have to clean it up. But it forms inside of thermally created like bubbles in bread, only in the atmosphere, in the Earth's surface. So kind of that same bubbling that you get with yeast and bread. Make sense? Okay. Energetically, if you go to the front or right.
Hit it. Ready? Yes!
Amethyst is been used for many reasons throughout thousands of years. The oldest reference is actually in a Chinese text that's almost 38,000 years old. The more recent text that was used by the Greeks and the Romans to either make it so that people can either not get hung over. I mean, they would actually carve carve wine glasses and goblets out of amethyst. And if you drank out of it, you wouldn't get a hangover. But I can personally attest for you that that doesn't work as well, especially when you're pouring tequila in there. But maybe it works well with wine. Okay? There's a lot of mythology around amethyst, but one of the things that it does do is that it grants the bearer protection. Okay? Well, protection from what? And why would that be? Well, if you look, there's a chemical formula. It's a good thing I make glasses liquid. There is manganese and iron particulate that basically cooked together with the silicone gives it that purple color. Manganese in the brain makes you less fearful. It's one of the B complex vitamins. And so if you don't have enough of that, you can be a little paranoid. And so if you're a little paranoid, you're not going to take risks because you're going to be afraid, right? So if you take risks, usually it turns out to be pretty cool. So that's why it has a reputation for not for making people feel like they're protected. Amethyst has for many years been the crown chakra stone and been a doorway to access higher knowledge. So one of the other side effects of the formula is it causes the corpus callosum to become more active. And although scientists don't believe that that connects you more spiritually, I guess that's why they're scientists and not priests. It enhances psychic abilities. Okay, well, if your occipital lobe, which is where you get all of your sensory information, butts right up against the occipital lobe, butts right up against the corpus callosum, and that's more active, what do you think that does to your sensory perception? Maybe you get an extra sensory perception. Okay? There are people that, we sold it. There was a great big geode here the last time I was in town.
You're welcome.
They put really, how dare you sell it?
I didn't sell it.
Okay, anyway, but the amethyst, the reason why people put amethyst geodes in their office and won't be without them is because they basically both draw people in and also make them feel good about being there.
There's one in my cupboard.
Something like this, bigger and taller. Well, I guess you could say size matters. What I'm saying, though, is that if you're getting energy from a stone that is this big, if you had one that's that big, it would probably give you more energy. If you had one that was this big, which was the one that was sitting here, okay, there are things that you can do to enhance energy, such as, get an energy source like a light or a piece of granite and set it on a piece of granite because granite has its own energy. they call it radiation, although it's really not. It's kind of a radon energy generator. That's why, and granite's not dangerous unless you seal yourself in a room or a building with it. It's got to be able to float and dissipate. So, now, what most people don't really think about is that amethyst is in the family of quartz. It's actually a piece of quartz that nature has dyed purple. So it's the same as,
I was just wondering that, actually.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's rose quartz, there's smoky quartz, there's citrine, and citrine also is another version of quartz. I mean, quartz is SiO2, which there is a harder stuff called diamonds, but you don't usually get a geode of that. But
When a stone looks like one of those where part's purple and part is white, is the white part quartz or is the
it's
whole
all
thing?
quartz.
It's
It's
all
100% quartz, but there's dyed purple parts.
Okay, and that makes sense.
And mankind didn't dye it, Mother Nature did. Okay. When I'm studying all of this in the laboratory, the different components from different parts of the world, I think that there is somewhat of a secret to, and my equipment's not refined enough yet, and I'm working on that, to be able to see what other trace elements are causing it to form in that way. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. Because if you take bread and sweeten it up, it's cake. If you take bread and remove the yeast, it's pocket bread or burritos. It's a different substance. So you add subtle amounts of something, and it changes it slightly. There are things that you pick up in Canada that are actually called Oralite 23. They have 23 different elements in it, but the most dominant element is manganese with the quartz, so it comes out looking mostly like a slightly cloudy version of amethyst, but actually it's a very powerful stone. There's another stone that was made popular by another teacher by the name of Melody, and it's called Super 7, and it has 7 elements in it. But one of those elements, obviously, is the same manganese that makes the amethyst purple because it has a really decisive line of purple running through every piece I've ever seen. So, when you're, do we have a piece of banded amethyst in the store? Even tumbled stone or something?
Yeah, let me find one.
Okay. There's actually some things that I wanted to show about banded amethyst. That's actually that bracelet right there next to you. That one right there. Looks like it has some banded amethyst in it. This actually has a family of amethyst. But you see how that this is very white, but the end is very purple, very white and very purple. This has trace elements of molybdenum in it, and molybdenum basically causes the colors to separate. Well, it's on the table of elements, and and one of the things that's really cool is that we're there's this thing called the table of elements, and all of those elements make up our planet. And there was a old sage wizard by the name of Albert Einstein. You ever heard of him? He said that it's impossible to be in a system yet separate from it. Okay? And so you can't, your species can't develop on a planet that has all that stuff in it without you having all that stuff in it. Okay? So the reason why stones, minerals, crystals, and gems, we react to them and have since there's been human beings and stones on the planet at the same time, and although that's debatable as to when that took place, it was an awfully long time ago. And one of the things that most people don't really get is that human beings do things because it's easy. We as a race are ambitiously lazy. Okay? We want to find the quickest way to get done whatever it is that we want to do. Right? Okay. I mean, certainly within our lifetimes, we have seen technology come and go. You ever heard of a fax machine? And when within a year of that thing coming out, how often did we use it? Wasn't it like used for everything? How often do you use that now?
Well, unfortunately, in my work, I still use it.
Oh.
I haven't used one in my life, if that helps.
Well, and so the thing is that, I mean, I remember when somebody came into my office right after fax, after our office got a fax that we paid a lot of money for. My assistant was all giddy about the fact that she just sent 2 pieces of paper clear across the country, and it only took 20 minutes. Well, that was very cool back then. If somebody said that to an 18-year-old, the kid would go, "Is your phone broke? Don't you know how to use it?" Okay. So, as it relates to stones, though, they have found stones in caves that dated 100,000 years ago. And I don't mean on the floor. I mean set up on like a high place with dried flowers around it. There are some scientists that want us to believe that that was like where they kept their garbage. Not so much. But we have also found buried with Egyptian kings and queens stones against their skin. Not as just jewelry, but stones against their skin. We see in paintings and drawings of art and other things from the Roman Empire that people wear stones against their skin or in their tunic, not just as jewelry. Okay. The Druids and Celtics and Vikings all used stones in their hilt, in their swords, in their armor, right? And I'm sure that was just because they're pretty. There has been a medical association with stones ever since they first came up with that 200 years ago. Okay. At first they ground up raw stone and had people take it. Well, that didn't work so good. Almost as good as bloodletting. But there were people that took and ingested stone powders up until, the mid-19th century. Like 1950. What they don't realize is that every medication you're taking, where do they get that from? You have a piece of lepidolite around somewhere? Here it is, right here. That is called lepidolite. Bring it over here. That is called lepidolite. It's a purple and white stone. They get 2 drugs out of this. Would you like to know which 2 those are? Now, I'll give you a hint. My ancestors used to take something like this and tuck it into somebody's headband if they had a bad case of the SADS. No, you're close though. And if there was a child that was really, really active, that happens in the Apache Kingdom. Really active child, they'd make them carry one or two of these. Grandma gave me a pocket full. When they process this, they produce the drug lithium. When they super process it and concentrate it, they use it for the base for the drug Ritalin. Now, modern science has something that they've developed that the ancient healers never had access to. Would you like to know what that is? Adverse side effects. It didn't cause kidney damage back then. Okay. How are we doing on time? That's lepidolite in mica. She just found. Purple.
We've been going for like 25.
Huh?
We've been going for like 25. Still got plenty.
Okay. Oh, I'm not out of things to talk about. Look at my notes. Talk too fast. One of the pieces of mythology declares a variation of a story about Dionysus had been insulted by a mortal and swore to slay the next mortal who crossed his path, creating fierce tigers to carry out his wrath. The mortal turned out to be a beautiful young woman, Amethyst, who was on her way to pay tribute to Artemis. Her life was spared by Artemis, who transferred the maiden into a statue of pure crystalline quartz to protect her from brutal claws. Dionysus wept tears of wine in remorse for his action at the sight of the beautiful statue. The god's tears stained the quartz purple. That story is amusing to me because there are many spiritual stories out there. One's just as good as the other. Physically, amethyst is a stone that's recommended to help butterflies, nervous stomach, excessive gas, nervous perspiration, helpful to cleanse and release addictions. We talked a little bit about that. Emotionally brings down arrogance, brings up confidence and a sense of empowerment. Mentally helps with gifts of discernment and intuition by assisting them to become more specific or targeted. Spiritually aids in healing of all spiritual illness. Most people don't really understand what I mean by spiritual illness, and I teach a lot more about this in my healing class that I do. But the spiritual healing is necessary whenever somebody's had their faith dashed, their faith in another human being, their faith in a certain religion, their faith in another way. I mean, even the King James Version of the Bible still says that without hope, the people perish. So, if somebody has a lack of hope or they've had their trust destroyed, amethyst seems to be one of those stones that helps many people heal themselves spiritually. And that's mostly accomplished when you meditate with the stone. because when you meditate with the stone, it opens you up to higher and better levels. Does that make sense? Okay. Amethyst is the birthstone for February, and the qualities of a person born under this stone is very protective of all they hold dear. The amethyst person can be overshadowing about the people they care about, can be a powerful adversary. This stone is a purple variety of quartz crystal, and it provides protection and spiritual attunement. So it is not uncommon to see those characteristics very strong in the amethyst person. Any questions? Okay.
I was so I have some earrings that look like they're amethyst and citrine,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if they're made. It says here that you can, if you heat it up, it can turn. I don't know if they're made. I was told they were.
I would have to see them. There is a natural form of yellow citrine, but that only comes from a very specific area of the world. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that it's a bad combination. Because obviously ametrine is amethyst and citrine. Even nature does that.
Is this natural? Is
Yes.
this amethyst?
Yeah. That's from Uruguay as well. So that's the natural version.
So this is natural citrine? Or
Natural citrine.
it was amethyst heated up?
No, it's an amethyst heated up.
Okay, so this is the actual.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for coming.
I like to sit in
Derek?
these rocks.
It is relaxing, isn't it?